So I've done videos of 10 ways to use washi tape and 5 ways to use wide washi tape, but today I'm sharing 5 ways to use PETAL washi tape on your cards and paper crafting projects. I'm going to start off by creating a background for my cards, and I'm going to do that with a gel press. If you are looking for a more in-depth video, I'm going to speed through this so that we can get to the washi tape techniques. But if you're looking for a more in-depth video on gel press, then I'll link one or two in the top right-hand corner. So I started off by putting some yellow-green acrylic paint down on the gel press, and then I just have a stencil here, Lotsabubbles from Wow Embossing, and I'm using a piece of deli paper to pick up the majority of that acrylic paint through the stencil. I want that to be my first layer, and then I'm going to put on Naples yellow greenish. I was thinking that I wanted a pretty light background with some texture in it, but once I pull this print, I realized it's a little too light for my liking. There's not enough contrast in it, so I'm going to add some Prussian blue. So here you can see the print here. I'm adding some Prussian blue, and I don't just want the flat blue on there, so I want to add some texture to this as well. I'm taking off a lot of the paint, any of the excess paint, and rolling it off on that piece of deli paper over on the side. And then once the paint is dry, I'm going to use a dry brayer and just kind of distress the surface and take up some of the paint, but it kind of takes it off in a distressed, patchy manner. Now the paint is totally dry, so I need to re-wet it in order to pull the print. If you try and put a piece of paper down on dry paint, it's not going to pull any of the paint off of the gel press. So you need to re-wet it, and then you can pull your print. So now I have tons of texture, lots of contrast, but it's a little too dark for my liking. So I'll come in with some white acrylic paint. I put a thin layer on the gel press. I'll use a rubbing plate to add a bit of a pattern to this, just some swirls. Then I'm going to let the paint dry a little bit because same thing, I want to pick up a little bit of that paint. I don't want to completely cover the entire surface with white, otherwise it's going to take away my contrast. So I want some open areas on the gel press where those darker blues are going to show through. So just press that down, and so now you can see I have some lighter areas of white and then the darker areas of the blue. So I'm pretty happy with that. So we'll move on to the card making. So I have a piece of A2 size, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch white cardstock here, and I'm going to put the glue down on that, and then I'm just going to set my print on top of that. I want some torn edges, but I find it's a little bit easier to kind of tear it methodically this way. I'm just kind of scoring the edges a little bit, and I'm going to use a T-square ruler along the side and then just tear the paper alongside of the ruler. So I'm tearing it a little bit short of the A2 size card so that you see some of that card panel showing through. And I'll just tear that along the side, along all 3 sides. Now, I wanted a more organic edge on the bottom, so I just tore that by hand without the aid of a ruler. Here I have the journal memory washi tape, and these washi tapes are from the washi tape shop, and I'll have all of the supplies linked down below for you guys. So I'm just going to fold that around the back so it stays nice and adhered, and then I'll just tear off a little bit more of the bottom. So now we have a nice background for our flower. So I have the Frangipani washi tape from the Purple Picturesque set, and so this is a PETAL washi tape, and this is just such a cool, I don't know why I haven't seen these before, you guys. These are new to me, although they've been around for a year or two. I just haven't seen them before, and I thought it was a really unique type of washi tape. So I want my flowers to be 3-dimensional. So what I've done is put the base of them on the back of my cardstock, and I'm using an anti-static powder tool, which basically has almost like a cornstarch type powder in it. If you don't have one of these, you can totally use cornstarch from your kitchen and just dust that on the back of these petals. Basically, I'm doing this to take the adhesive stick away from the top 2/3 of these petals. I want the base to still have the adhesive of the washi tape so that I can actually form the flower and it can stay stuck to the card, but I don't want the petals to stick to each other on those upper 2/3 because I want it to be 3-dimensional and kind of pop off the card towards us. To make your flower look realistic, you don't just want to put that last petal on top. You want to weave it so that the right side, depending on how you're doing it, you want one side above and one side below the other tape so that they're kind of interwoven, all of the petals. And if you look at a typical plumeria, that's what you'll see. You'll kind of see that star-shaped spiral pattern in the middle. Now, I love these yellow flowers with the white tips, but plumeria or frangipani have a ton of different colors. So I decided to grab a purple Copic marker. This is RV66, and just add a little bit of color to the tips of these petals. There are lots of plumeria that have that fuchsia color and yellow blended together, so you could come up with a ton of different color combinations. You can even color on top of the yellow because Copic markers are transparent. You could color up on top of the yellow and come up with some different color combinations for these petals. So I'm just using the colorless blender to blend in some of my edges and make it a little bit transparent and kind of a better blend from the purple to the yellow there. So I decided I wanted to be able to move these flowers around, and so rather than stick them directly to the card, I've pulled off a piece of that deli paper and added a little bit of glue to the back of that, and I'm going to glue that on the back of my flowers. I kept the piece of deli paper pretty small, and it didn't really extend past that center of the flower where you have multiple layers, so you can't really see it through the washi tape, which is perfect. So we have a couple techniques here already. So we've created three-dimensional elements for our cards by adding the anti-static powder tool to the back 2/3 of the petals. And then by adding a little bit of that deli paper and gluing that to keep the flower together, that makes it movable so we can move it around. We've also colored the petals, so you can always color your washi tape. You can also draw details onto your washi tape as well. That's another really fun thing to do. Instead of using the third flower, I opted for a little butterfly, and so I have these butterfly wings, which are from a 13-piece custom washi contest design set. And you can see that you have individual wings that you can put together to make a front-facing butterfly, or you have these wings that kind of show the butterfly from the side. If you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing down below. So I stamped a sentiment directly on the label, and then I'll add a secondary sentiment on a piece of the background. Check out the dimension on these. Now these will lay flat in your envelope without having the petals stick to each other. I really love the translucency of the journal washi tape so that you can see the background through the tape with the text. I just love the look of that. I've already used the anti-static powder tool on the back of these petals on the upper 2/3 because I want these petals to be three-dimensional as well. But instead of making plumeria or that complete open flower, I'm just going to use 3 petals and kind of make more upward blooming flowers here. I'll use some Polychromos color pencils to create some stems here, some wavy stems. And I'm going to keep this card really clean and simple. So we have the distressed background at the bottom, has some yellow in it that coordinates with the flowers, but we have all of this white space that's just going to keep this design looking crisp and bright and cheery. I think it looks really nice when you continue your color pencil up onto the washi tape. So to create the bottom of that flower, bring your green, and I'm using a warm gray here to add some shadow and a little bit of texture to these stems. Bring that right up onto your washi tape so that you get a more cohesive look. I'll add a little bit of a phthalo green here just to kind of match the background a little bit more. I've stamped my sentiment and just added it on white cardstock and kind of put those on a little bit wonky and kept everything just beautifully clean and simple. There's actually 6 washi tapes in this set, and you can see the one that I'm using now is the one on the bottom right stack of this set. They're individual flowers, and I thought they looked just like individual hydrangea blooms. So I'm going to cluster them together to create those larger blooms. So I'm adhering some directly to the cardstock, and then I'm using some foam squares to lift up some of the layers. So I'll use either 1 or 2 or stack 2 pieces of foam squares to get varying degrees of height on these. And I originally did this, I kind of cut out a circle of cardstock and started kind of putting all of the blooms around the edge of the cardstock and then kind of went in a radial pattern towards the center. And it just looked really fake to me when I did that. I find it's a lot, but you get much better results if you just put a couple down on the bottom and then you start stacking them up like this. You get a much more organic pattern. So then I just cut around the blooms and I have these 3 individual pieces. So these little clusters are actually backed by cardstock. I just fussy cut them out with some scissors. For the background, I was thinking I wanted some yellows to kind of coordinate with some of the yellows you see in these petals. And I grabbed a scrap of gel press print that I had. And then I have the map memory washi tape here. And I'm just kind of stacking these up to create a few layers on the bottom of this background. Ultimately, I felt like this background color was too close to the color of the petals, and it all just kind of blended in together and you couldn't really see what was going on. Also, when I started looking at these 3 different elements, I decided one large element would be better. So I end up taping these 3 elements together on the back with another piece of washi tape to create one big hydrangea bloom, and you can see that up top. Now that deli paper that I was using to clean off my brayer, that's actually what I'm using for this background. So I've just used a Nuvo glue pen to add some glue to the top of my cardstock, and I've put on that cast off paper there. And I'm liking this color combination a lot better. I think it sets off the flowers on their own a lot better than the yellows and oranges of the other background. But I do end up using that other background in my last card. I thought having a cluster of 3 background elements would look more pleasing, so I'm just adding a strip of one of the tapes from the Spring Blossoms washi tape set here. And I picked that because it had some white flowers with some green, and I thought it would coordinate nicely. So here's our 4th way to use PETAL Washi tape. And I am so impressed at how realistic this hydrangea bloom looks. This washi tape is so detailed and beautifully colored. For our last card, I decided to actually create a pressed flower look. So far, we've been adding tons of dimension with the first 4 ways we use PETAL Washi tape, and the 5th way we're going to use PETAL Washi tape is with this pressed flower look. So rather than using the anti-static powder tool on the back of these petals, I'm just going to adhere them directly to the card. Right now there's just a touch of dimension with them, but I'm going to press these all the way down and they will have that pressed flower look. The reason it looks so realistic for a pressed flower is because the washi tape is a little bit transparent. So you can see the petal that's underneath it through the petal that's on top. And so you get a beautifully layered look, not only with the texture and the tactile feel of it, but also visually being able to see the petals through each other. So it's a really pretty look. Again, when you're using your color pencils, bring the green and the warm gray or the brown or whatever colors you're using up onto the petal. So I did some super rudimentary leaves here. This is more of a Zentangle pattern than anything else, but just to keep it really simple. So I did end up using that background, and here you can see a close-up of the detail on these petals as well, and how gorgeous it is, that translucent aspect of the washi tape. Let's recap 5 ways to use PETAL Washi tape. The first way was to create the 3-dimensional elements of a full open flower. The second way was to color the washi tape. So you can either color the washi tape with Copic markers or with color pencils, or you could even add details to the washi tape. Maybe you want some fine details in there. You can do that with a fine liner or a Micron pen. The third way to use PETAL Washi tape is to create a partially open bloom. The 4th way to use PETAL Washi tape is to create a huge bloom. So use those individual flowers and create that large hydrangea bloom. It's such a beautiful look and so 3-dimensional and realistic. And then the 5th way we used PETAL Washi tapes is as pressed flowers on your card. So really capitalizing on the translucent properties of the washi tape to create that realistic pressed flower look. I hope you guys enjoyed these 5 ways to use PETAL Washi tape. And if you did, be sure to give me a like and subscribe down below. Click the notifications on so you don't miss my next video. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you soon with more inspiration. As always, there's a supply list in the description down below.